the I-24 News National Security Podcast in partnership with INSS, the Institute for National Security Studies. I'm your host, Nicole Zedeck. Each week, we bring you in-depth discussions with expert analysts on some of the most pressing national security challenges facing Israel today. So, let's get started. Now, here in the Middle East, influence isn't just built with military strength or economic dominance. It's shaped through soft power, the ability to win hearts and minds. From Saudi Arabia's bold move to host the 2034 FIFA World Cup to Israel's leadership as startup nation in both technology and innovation, the region is rewriting the playbook on global influence. But what are the goals behind these strategies? And how are they transforming the region's global image? In today's episode, we'll explore how Middle Eastern countries used soft power to achieve their strategic objectives. What does Saudi Arabia aim to accomplish with the 2034 FIFA World Cup? How does Israel's focus on technology and innovation compare to Qatar's cultural diplomacy? And which country is proving to be the most successful in building its soft power strategy? These are big questions and a lot to discuss. And to talk about it all, I am joined by Dr. Tomer Fadlon, Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies and a lecturer at Tel Aviv University. Dr. Tomer Fadlon, thank you for being with us on the podcast today.
Hi, thanks. Nice to begin.
I think as we're beginning, it's important for our listeners to understand what exactly is soft power. This is a term that is not used in everyday language, so let's break it down first for us.
Not at all. Yeah, soft power became highly popular after the Second World War when scholars tried to figure out new versions or new ways in order to solve conflicts or in order to shape the global arena without using military strength. During the Cold War, soft power played a significant role, actually, in the American victory in the Cold War. Because soft power overall is a component of a country's national strategy that is not coercive. Following the Second World War, and specifically in the 90s, countries tried to avoid using coercive strategies in order to combat other countries around the world.
So these coercive strategies would be more hard power then?
Precisely. Yeah, we should differentiate between hard power, which is usually the combination between military strength, military power, and economic power. And the third variable here would be soft power, which is completely different than hard power. When using military power or economic power, we usually use coercive strategies. For example, country A uses economic sanctions against other country. Or military power, I don't need even to demonstrate because it is well known, of course, that one country, Russia, invades into Ukraine. These are coercive strategies. Soft power is completely different. Countries trying to capture hearts and minds of other fellows around the world and other countries around the world. And believe it or not, because sometimes it sounds a bit weird, but it works. And the greatest example of them all would be, of course, the Cold War between the United States and Russia, and the Soviet Union, I'm sorry. I mean, the Cold War has been Cold War because no Russian soldier confronted any American soldier during the Cold War. The soft power of the US played a significant role here. How come? Because soft power is the way to capture hearts and minds by using political values, by using foreign policy, by using culture. And sometimes it's not even actively used. For example, in the 70s and in the 80s, people from the other side, from the eastern side of the Iron Curtain, in Poland or in Czechoslovakia or in Russia, Soviet Union and other countries, wanted something else. What is this something else? For example, in the 70s and the 80s, they have been more exposed to Hollywood, for example, and to democracy, liberalism, and of course, NBA, National Basketball Association of the United States. They wanted to go to concerts and to see Michael Jackson and Madonna. They wanted to drive a Cadillac and not a Lada, and they wanted to wear Levi's jeans. All of them are associated with the American culture and with the United States. And not all of them are actively participated by the country or the government. They are just the fruits of liberalism and the liberalization of the markets. And they are fruits of capitalism and personal freedom of the people in the United States. So overall, in the 70s and the 80s, the soft power of the United States played a significant role in the ending of the Cold War. And as a matter of fact, when the Cold War ended, of course, that all of the citizens from the eastern part of the Iron Curtain wanted the same items. Now, it's very important to understand that, yeah, we made the separation between hard power, which is a combination of military power and economic power, and soft power. But of course, that Cadillac or Levi's jeans are products of the American economy. But A, it's a part of the American culture, and B, that is a part of using the economic strength in order to create these kind of products that were not available in the Soviet Union. So it's hard to understand, it's very important to understand that sometimes there is even a dialogue between these three components of power, because economic power can support and the economic strength can support the soft power. And by the way, sometimes even military power supports or decreases the soft power of one country or another.
I think that's an interesting thing, especially here in the Middle East, as we continue to see these power dynamics. And it seems like most of the countries here in the Middle East, their main emphasis is in the hard power, but we're seeing more of a shift in that for some of these countries. Yeah,
we're seeing a shift in, I would say, like the last 25 years of several countries, such as Qatar, such as the UAE, of course, the Emirates, such as Saudi Arabia, such as Bahrain. We're seeing these countries that some of them, by the way, don't have any military power to achieve their desired goals around the world. So we see them using more methods that are related to soft power. And some of them, such as Qatar, which is only 3 million people country, and I would also add to this UAE, are actually punching above their weight thanks to soft power. Because if you think about it, they don't have any possibilities to become a military power or military might, especially Qatar. Qatar, as we all know, Qatar is only a 3 million people country that has the biggest U.S. military base in the Middle East, because they need the Americans to support them and they need the Americans to defend them against other threats. They cannot achieve these goals by themselves. However, they can punch above their weight thanks to the combination between economic power and soft power.
So they can still have some global influence without having a strong military presence. And it's interesting how Qatar specifically has gained some of this global influence. Let's talk about sports diplomacy when it comes to soft power, because this is such an interesting aspect of it. It seems like sports can really bring people together. In fact, I want to read you a quick quote, because in 2022, when U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was touring the Middle East, he said, "We use sports as a way of connecting people to our country. Whenever I go around the world, whatever, again, our differences may be, sports bring us together." An interesting statement as he's coming here to the Middle East talking about sports. And one of the reasons we saw that was because of the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar.
Yeah, certainly. But you know, in the US, for example, in the UK, it's very easy to explain that because sports plays a significant role into the British culture and into the American culture. But how about Qatar? How about the Saudis? They never invented soccer or American football or basketball or something like this. But it also plays a significant role for these countries because, first of all, they want to host these major tournaments. You can achieve the same desired goals and to impact people around the world by hosting these major events. The FIFA World Cup, for example, this is a monumental event, a mega event, but I would even start with lower tier events, such as Formula One, for example. The most popular motor race in the world, which is Formula One, you have circuits all around the Middle East. Only 24 circuits around the world, only 24. And you have one in Bahrain, you have one in Qatar, you have one in the UAE, and you have one in Saudi Arabia. That is remarkable. And it's an outcome not only of the FIA, not only of Formula One that wants to have like more revenue from the Middle East. It comes from countries from the Middle East that offer their circuits and offer to sponsor their circuits in order to achieve their desired goal and to have better image around the world.
And so what is that goal? Is it, on the one hand, painting these countries in the Middle East as more modern nations, showing the rest of the world the culture that they have? Why host these different sports arenas? A
main component in soft power is tourism, okay? And it brings tourism, that's for sure. But moreover, it exposes these countries to people around the world that still, in some parts of the world, believe that the Middle East is only desert and camels. Okay, so we have a lot of other things that is not exactly desert and camels. And, like a year and a half ago, for example, Saudi Arabia paid Lionel Messi to have an ad with them in order to expose Saudi Arabia. And the main slogan was like, Saudi Arabia is not exactly what you thought of. It's something completely different. And when you have this kind of figure that is doing ad with Saudi Arabia and exposes Saudi Arabia to the world, it have a very significant added value. So when you're hosting a Formula One circuit, it has an added value because it exposes your culture. It exposes your country all around the world, not only the tourists that are coming to see the race itself, but also to people at home watching the circuit.
But it also can expose the downsides. That's one of the problems that we did see leading up to Qatar's hosting of the FIFA World Cup, all of the human rights issues that then were brought to light in this spotlight.
Definitely. You're definitely correct here, because it also has another dimension that can be more negative than positive. But let me just say a word about the World Cup, because the World Cup is a mega event. It's a different level of event. When a country is hosting the World Cup, it's much more than punching above their weight. Because even if I'm talking about other countries, if I will address other countries around the world that has bigger economies than Qatar and Saudi Arabia, not all of them can actually host a World Cup. It is hard to meet the economic, logistical challenges of hosting a World Cup.
Building these arenas, having the housing for everyone to come, building different revenue options for when the tourists do come.
Precisely. That is why you see countries even big as Japan and South Korea in 2002 hosting together, co-hosting the World Cup, because it's that difficult. In 2034, it's going to be Saudi Arabia. In 2022, it was Qatar, which is remarkable to think of. Qatar actually put itself on the spotlight. It received the benefit of hosting the World Cup, which no one could even believe is possible. And they hosted quite a successful World Cup, which is remarkable to think of. Tourists arrived to the World Cup, tourists was exposed to Qatar, to the stadiums and everything, and people were quite surprised how well the Qataris hosted the World Cup. However, as you said, on the other hand, people got also more information about some policies in Qatar and some difficult burdens that the Qatari did nothing in order to move them away. Such as 2 days before the World Cup started, if you remember, Qatar announced that, with all due respect, that we approved selling beers in the stadium, selling alcohol. No, we dismissed this. We declined that. We're going to compensate these firms such as Budweiser, the American beer firm, and we are not allowing that at all. Okay, that was quite a negative aspect of the World Cup. Moreover, when people started to dig in and to understand how was it possible for Qatar to host the World Cup, they realized that, there was probably some corruption involved to FIFA, and there was also other things that were quite problematic, such as the labor conditions in Qatar that probably killed hundreds of foreign workers in Qatar in order to achieve this phenomenal hosting the World Cup.
So it's twofold, many of these different soft power strategies. And seems to be the strategy Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates are all taking. But how about Israel? Because when it comes to sports, concert venues, all of this type of soft power of really showing the culture, Israel, although tries to have a little play on it, that is not Israel's strong suit. It's technology and innovation. We're not called startup nation for no reason. And so how does that play at soft power differentiate?
Okay, so think about what I said like a couple of minutes ago about how economic strength helps the society and soft power. So definitely you can see this in Israel, given the startup nation and the technological hub that Israel became. But actually, Israel had a significant soft power in the world already in the 50s, in the early 50s. How come? Because many people around the world were very attracted to this newborn country, the land of the Bible, the Jewish people that finally come to their land again after 2,000 years of exile. So not always you need to have some kind of economic strength in order to achieve some soft power. Okay, so these Middle Eastern examples of Qatar, UAE, and even Israel nowadays are not relevant to all of the cases because Israel demonstrated pretty well. Nowadays, Israel still is trying to create this image of the land of the Bible, Jerusalem, of course, but it also comes with more innovative aspects. Israel, of course, is always using Jerusalem as a great example of attracting tourism, but also Tel Aviv. In 2007, of course, they started with the slogan, the campaign with the slogan, the non-stop city of Tel Aviv. The non-stop city, the city that never sleeps, and everything like that. And in a contribution to this, a bit later, more and more technological firms arrived to Tel Aviv as well, because Israel became a big startup nation. So technology plays a significant role because countries around the world and people around the world are finding Israel as an attractive hub of technology, and an attractive hub for other things as well. And Israel is also a good example of a country that its military power sometimes helps its soft power.
How so?
How so? Because if you think about the country that in the 6 Days War in 1967 came from behind as an underdog and achieves this, was able to push back all the invaders from Israel and to confront in several fronts against Egypt and Syria and other countries, it played a significant role in the soft power of Israel. I mean, military power, usually people believe that can decrease soft power. But it all depends on the situation, because this kind of military power that Israel was not the aggressor in 1967.
Overtaking Israel,
exactly.
Seen as the underdog.
Yeah, exactly. It was seen as the underdog, as not the aggressor. And if you think about nowadays that Israel is using its aerial defense methods and its aerial defense missiles, such as the Iron Dome, it really attracts other countries around the world. People want to look like you. They want to be similar to you when you do things like this, and they want to co-opt with you whenever you achieve this, whenever you demonstrate these kind of capabilities.
It seems that many of the countries themselves might want to then build these partnerships with Israel. It builds these diplomatic partnerships, these economic ventures as well. But what about the public perception? Because it seems like the public perception then for many of the people in these countries, they would much rather go to the FIFA World Cup than hear about the Iron Dome missile defense system.
It all depends, I would say, because some countries now actually understand that in the war that we are living in right now, it's quite necessary to have some kind of aerial defense, unlike before. You see more and more countries around the world, especially in Western Europe, since the Russian invasion to Ukraine, that are quite afraid of having to confront the same threats in the future. The same goes after the Iranian attack on Israel in April and October 2024. Countries in the region want to have some partnerships with Israel. And whenever the Iron Dome and the Aero 3 demonstrate their capabilities, demonstrate their achievements, it attracts more and more clients from around the world.
Well, that's interesting then, exactly how soft power could build these relationships specifically here in the Middle East. Can soft power help expand the Abraham Accords, let's say, and these different partnerships from Israel and its surrounding neighbors?
Certainly, because more countries can find Israel as a solid partner that can help them that can help them meet the same challenges that they are facing with currently, right now. So Saudi Arabia is a great example for that. Not Saudi Arabia, I'm sorry, UAE and Bahrain, of course, during 2020 Abraham
Maybe
Accords.
Saudi Arabia in the future.
Maybe Saudi Arabia in the future, and Qatar and other countries, yeah, it might happen.
Especially, I think, here in the Middle East, when we're focusing on the soft power and these regional dynamics, what is the main incentive for these countries in the Middle East to possibly focus more on their soft power initiatives, or is it truly a balance between the play at hard power and soft power?
I would say that some countries don't have the capabilities in order to maintain a solid hard power that is mainly military power. Therefore, they have to, as I said before, punch above the weight, and to shape the international arena in a way that will suit them better. And you see Qatar as a great example for that, not given the fact that it hosted the 2022 World Cup. But you see Qatar for 25 years already, or a bit more than that, using Al Jazeera as a television network that really designs and shapes minds around the world and shapes ideas around the world. You're seeing Qatar, and by the way, other Middle Eastern countries that are always in the top 10 list of countries that are donating to universities in the UK and the United States.
Trying to shape these minds.
Precisely, and it has its own implications, as you see, for example, in the demonstrations against Israel around the world since October 7th.
And so, when it comes to everything at play right now, then, do you think that Saudi Arabia, possibly, as we're talking about Qatar and how it changed this vision and really stepped into its soft power strategy, so to speak, following hosting the FIFA World Cup 2022, 2034, when it comes to Saudi Arabia's turf, do you think they're going to take some lessons from Qatar?
That's a pretty good question. I believe so. I believe so, because on the one hand, the Qatari World Cup was quite successful, and it was astonishing that a tiny country like this, which is, by the way, in the size of the Israeli Negev, okay,
put it into perspective.
Yeah, was able to host the World Cup. But on the other hand, it also exposed the people around the world to other things in Qatar that are not quite positive, and they're mainly negative. I think that Saudi Arabia learned a lesson from Qatar and from other countries, Russia, China, and other countries that also hosted big mega events such as the Olympic Games and the World Cup. And I think that by 2034, which is almost 10 years by now, many desired goals that Qatar set in mind in 2016, in its Vision 2030 plan, will be accomplished already, and will expose the world to a new Saudi Arabia. So it has a great opportunity to learn its lessons from other countries and to gain more soft power around the world, to capture more hearts and minds around the world.
2034, certainly a lot can happen, not only here in the region, but around the world in these next 10 years that could change exactly how we are even watching those games, perhaps. Dr. Tomer, we've been going very broad. I want to quickly, as we're wrapping up here, do a quick rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to give you the first reaction that comes from the top of your hand, okay? The first one being just which country, in your opinion, is leading the soft power race in the Middle East?
In the Middle East? Qatar.
Qatar?
Can I explain why?
Briefly.
Okay, briefly. Only the other day, Qatar was one of the big winners of the negotiations between Hamas and Israel. Qatar is opening channels for the United States and for other global powers in order to negotiate with Hamas, in order to negotiate with Taliban a few years ago, in order to negotiate with other countries around the world. So I think it's quite phenomenal.
A small little country using their soft power since they're lacking in that hard power, as we said, it's a great example. Now, which, in your opinion, is more influential when it comes to soft power? Sports diplomacy or technological advancements when it comes to gaining this global influence?
Great question. I will go with sports. Given the fact that sports always is in a positive discussion And I think that sports popularity increases dramatically every single year.
And so then when it comes to Israel that focuses on these tech advancements, what should Israel be doing to multiply its soft power?
I think that the dream is that Israel will be able to host a major sporting event, not alone, but with other countries such as Jordan, such as Lebanon, or such as Egypt. It can be a great achievement for soft power to Israel and other countries in the region.
Which sporting event would you want Israel to host?
I wish they can host the Olympic Games, but I don't think it's really possible in the upcoming 20 years or so.
So we'll have to see exactly what does unfold. Finally, Tomer, how will soft power, in your opinion, shape the region's future when it comes to global politics?
Oh, that's a hard one.
It's a more elaborate one, perhaps.
Yeah, I hope it will shape the region in a positive way and not in a negative way, because we know that you can also use soft power in order to have some negative aspect and have some negative outcomes, as I said, about Al Jazeera and, of course, the education system and other as a whole. But I hope that countries in the region will realize that they can use soft power more often, more frequently than other forms of power. That it's not all about military power or coercive economic power. That countries can align with each other and the countries can partner with each other for a better future for us and for the region and for the world.
Let's certainly hope that is the case. Dr. Tomer Fadlon, what an interesting conversation. Thank you for breaking down really the basis of soft power and how we're seeing it used around the world right now. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, that is our latest edition of the National Security Podcast. To catch up on all of our past episodes, you can head to Spotify, just search National Security Podcast, and you will see everything that we have talked about right there. As always, I'm Nicole Zedeck, and thank you so much for listening.